Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to take your seats, we're going to get started. Can the colleagues in Luxembourg hear us properly? I see some familiar faces over there. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Federico.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Hello.
excellent. Good afternoon, colleagues there. So welcome to this Connect University Summer School. This afternoon we're going to be discussing about digital identity, which is one of the key challenge in the digital world, and we're going to be discussing about how to protect our digital identity, and also what is directly related to this, which is privacy of citizens in a world that is more and more interconnected. We are going to have a very varied panel today, representing very broad and different interests, both from industry and research institutes. So we're going to get very complementary perspective, also building on what some of you may have heard as well from this morning's session. Myself, let me shortly introduce myself. I'm Pierre Chastanet. I'm the head of unit of the Cloud and Software Unit at DG Connect. My team is in charge of free flow of data policies in the EU, removing data localization restrictions in Europe to enable the free movement of non-personal data, but also more broadly free movement of data at large in the EU. So complementing the GDPR in that respect, and trying to create what could look like a common European data space. So in this session today, we're going to look a bit more specifically at personal data, digital identity, and how to ensure that all citizens have access to digital products and services in a secured manner, and in a way that preserve their privacy while ensuring a high level of security. So how to connect to various digital services in a trusted manner, in a way that guarantees that it's really the people that are connecting to the services that do have access to the service. So let me shortly introduce the different members of the panel. So we have two colleagues from Google, Felipe Lora, who is Senior Engineering Program Manager at Google, and Ludmila Georgieva, who is Public Policy and Government Affairs Manager at Google as well. On my right, we have Cecilia Zappala. She's EU Policy Manager at Facebook. And on her right-hand side, we have Siira Toivonen. She's a Senior Scientist and Project Manager at VTT, which is the Finnish Technical Research Center. So we're going to go through a number of presentations from the different speakers, and then there will be ample time for question and answer. We're going to try to take a few questions at the end of each presentation, so that we don't go through a whole set of presentation that gives you a chance to ask a question on the spot. But we will have a more substantive discussion at the end of the three presentation. Colleagues in Luxembourg, I can't see you anymore because I have the slides in front of me, but please do not hesitate to raise your hand if you can't hear anymore, or whenever you have question. I will try to make sure that you're given the floor at the end of each presentation. So many thanks for your attendance today, and I will propose that without delay we start with a presentation of Felipe. Many thanks.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's a presentation from Felipe and from me. Thank you very much to the Commission for the invitation. Let me say hi, my name is Ludmila. I work for Google for the last 6 months, and I see some familiar faces around the table since I was also a public servant in my previous life. And we decided today to have a kind of a common presentation together, engineer and policy people, in order to address, hopefully most of the questions will come up afterwards. So, because the topic of the university is cybersecurity, digital age, and the question of, also as Pierre addressed, how to access and how to secure the access to all the digital services. And cybersecurity is actually something for us which is, I think, we're like a company for the last 20 years. So every challenge for us is every new is a new opportunity, and cybersecurity is something probably now very modern, but for us from the very beginning part of our work. Cybersecurity, why? So does it clicker works? Okay. Sorry, a bit of technical issues.
Maybe
Please.
1 minute and I'll bring another one.
Okay, so for us, so I think Google does not need an introduction, but if you have any questions, happy to answer them afterwards. We have, why cybersecurity does matter to us. Cybersecurity, we have 9 products with each of them over 1 billion users. This is a lot of trust put in our hands. This is also responsibility which we take very seriously. And that's why for us, cybersecurity is nothing modern or new. So cybersecurity has been from the very beginning part of our thinking, of our engineering, and actually at the core of our work. If a product is not secure and does not fulfill our higher standards of internal standards of security, it's not launched on the market. So we try to today to approach the question of cybersecurity. How do we see cybersecurity internally and externally, and what is our understanding, and how do we actually implement it in the everyday life? We have, as I said, cybersecurity is modern. It's now a kind of our new GDPR, I would say. But it's also, for us, also the kind of a very trendy words like cybersecurity by design or cybersecurity by default. As I said, in our engineer thinking, security has been part from the very beginning. One could say cybersecurity is part of our DNA, because without cybersecurity, our products won't be actually working, and people won't trust us. And having some billion users trust, thank you very much. Okay, yes. And so the presentation stays lively. Thank you very much, Andrea, thank you. So these are some of the products you know: Gmail, calendar, maps, of course, search, all this stuff. So why, as I said, cybersecurity is part of our DNA, and cybersecurity is something that you continuously work on. This is not a final condition. It's something that you say, I have it now and forever. This is actually a process you have to work on. It's continuous development. It's learning, protection, and cooperation. And this kind of understanding has to reflect also in our internal and external activities and thinking. Internal, why? Because cybersecurity has always 2 dimensions. Internal in the way how we approach cybersecurity in our structure and processes, and external, if we secure our network, so the biggest network in the world, this is great, but it does not actually end there. So cyber attacks, as we know, actually are borderless, so it's actually something that we have, and we work together with other stakeholders and with competitors, with NGOs, with civil society, with governments, to ensure that cybersecurity, there is cybersecurity awareness beyond our company borders. How do we approach this? This understanding of cybersecurity, Defenseindepth, trust through transparency, abstraction, automation, and innovation. And I'm very happy to pass here now to Felipe, who is from our traveled from Munich today to give a kind of a technical overview of how we approach this in our products.
Thank you, Ludmila. So let me briefly try to explain what we mean by this different four approaches that we have. So we've learned in the past that Defenseindepth is the model that we're striving to move forward. The old model of building a wall or a moat around your castle does not work anymore. So we try to put in different layers of security at different places. Not only one big wall with a gate, but several different places where security is controlled and checked. The second one is trust through transparency, and not just through technology. So we're thinking of this in terms of designing trust in the products that we build. And you can think about this in a way of, we say we're doing this specific thing with this project, and we allow external people, our users or customers, to go and verify and check this. A concrete example of this is the Android operating system, which is open source, for example. Abstraction and automation actually allows us to make sure that we don't make mistakes at scale. So Ludmila was talking before about billions of users, and you can imagine how very quickly one small mistake can multiply across those 9 billion users very quickly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what automation and abstraction mechanisms we have in place and how we think about that. And the last one, the fourth one, is innovation. We're convinced that all the knowledge that we have gained through the years is better put to use once we share it with a broader community. So everything that we've learned and all the tools and experiences that we have seen in our industry, we'd like the rest of the world to also benefit from this. It's the rise of the tide lifts all boats, if you will. So let's look at some examples of Defenseindepth. And the 3 screens that you're seeing here are on-device mechanisms that help keep our users in a safer world. The first one on your left is actually a pop-up or a screen that tells your users that they're trying to install a potentially harmful application, some malware, some virus, some scamming application. And we detect that, we're able to detect that on the device and let the users know that they should perhaps not be installing this. The one in the middle is the counterpart for the web. So if a user opens their Chrome browser and they go to a site that we have categorized as deceptive, we give them a heads up and let them know, you should perhaps not be visiting this place unless you have a reason to do so. And the one on the right is what we called boot integrity for the device. So we are able to detect that some piece of software that starts your phone has been changed and modified, and that your security could be compromised. So we give also this heads up to our users to avoid them from getting into a bad space. But this is not all. So this is one of the layers that we have. This is the on-device layer. I want to spend briefly some time talking about what we do on the cloud. This is yet another layer of security where we have. So when developers upload their applications to what we call the Google Play Store, where users can go and download them, we do a first security scan on those applications. We try to find out a couple of things. We try to find out if there's a virus, if there's a malware. We try to find out if it's a malicious application, for instance, that is trying to impersonate a well-known application in order to get clicks for ads or to trick users into doing something that they shouldn't do. On the cloud, we do daily 6 billion application checks per day. We not only check the new applications that are currently uploaded, but we do that with the old ones as well. Another on-cloud safety mechanism that we have is that we're able to do scans on the devices. So we pick random sets of devices that are out there, and we do 400 million security scans on the devices per day to have a sense and a pulse of how the environment and how the ecosystem is behaving, and to let us actually discover those new threats that we might have not known from the past. Overall, we protect more than 1 billion devices. So if you look at all those little green Androids on your screen, imagine that there's 1,000 of them. There's actually 986. Please imagine there's 14 more. This represents the amount of devices that we have. If you look at the orange bottom corner, that represents 1% of those devices. This 1% are those devices that have potentially harmful applications today installed. Now, if we look only at those users who download their applications from our store, that number goes down to 0.15%. And that's those 1.25 red Android figurines that you see on the bottom. So this is kind of an idea to give the sense or the dimension of the work that we're doing and how we maintain those 1 billion plus devices protected. But that's not all. I talked about trust through transparency. And there's a couple of ways that we do that. One of them is, I already mentioned, making Android open source. This gives the ability for people who develop out there to go see that we're doing what we claim that we're doing, but it also lets them build their own security mechanisms on top of that and improve our products even further. We also have a set of transparency reports that you can go and look for online, transparency.google.com. Here's an illustrative example of a report that shows the amount of potentially harmful applications per country in a horizon of roughly a year, a little bit more than a year. This is just one example. We have such reports around government requests for data that we get. We have those reports in terms of email encryption, the state of email encryption. We have those reports in terms of the secure web connections that we see coming to our pages and our sites. On the automation side, 1 billion plus devices. We have noticed that when you rely on manual intervention for updating security levels of the devices, many things can go wrong. So what we have done for this is we've made the security and automation patches automatic. So on Android devices, for instance, these happen once every month. On Chrome, on your left, this happened every 6 weeks. Now, what this allows us to keep the ecosystem safer is that we're able to actually push these updates on a 24-hour basis for those critical security flaws that we can find to make sure that we prevent those users out there. Now, there's another important counterpart for this, and it's that developers who built their applications can actually check the state of the device they're running in. So imagine that you own a financial application and that you discover that the phone that you're running in is an old phone with no security at all. You might want to be able to restrict the critical transfer flows that a user can do in that case. But if you know that the user actually has one of the most up-to-date and security strong devices, you might want to let them do different things than for the other model. So it lets the developers handle the risk models that they want to handle appropriately. On the abstraction front, and I won't go too deeply, we build frameworks for developers to essentially use our best practices and prevent common mistakes. So the fourth approach that I mentioned at the beginning is innovation, and we have plenty of examples. I'm just going to mention very quickly some of them. Google Vulnerability Rewards programs are those programs where we partner closely with the security community out there, with the research community, to make sure that their effort is valued and that every time there's a flaw that is, or a vulnerability that is discovered, people get rewarded for that. We have Project Zero, which is a team at Google that works on discovering what we call zero-day vulnerabilities, or vulnerabilities that are not known out there yet, which are exploited by malicious actors throughout the world. We have education grants for GCP. We have research awards that are provided. And the last concrete example that you have probably seen when you go to a website is what we have called a reCAPTCHA. So it's that little checkbox when you open a website that says, click here, I'm not a robot. This is a piece of technology that we built and made available for everyone who wants to build a website to protect their sites from automated attacks. And then another example that I wanted to show is this digital attack map. So this is a joint effort that we've done where we essentially allow to visualize the data of distributed denial of service attacks from where they come, where they go. And this allows the research community, the journalists to connect the dots, to find out patterns, to actually be able to learn a little bit more of what's going out there. So we make this information also available to the world. I want to end up my part of the presentation talking about the Google Safety Engineering Center, which we opened in Munich a short time ago. It's a global hub for safety engineering. It's in the heart of Europe. One of the products that we built there is the Google account. And these safety features that we built in Munich are not only for German users, they're not only for European users. These are the features and the security mechanisms and the privacy controls that we built for all Googlers, for all Google users worldwide. And the goal of the Safety Engineering Center in the future is to continue contributing and partnering with the research community, with the different industrial partners, with academics to help improve even more the current ecosystem. And with that, I'm handing it over to Ludmila.
Thank you, Felipe. So basically, as we said in the beginning, there is an internal and external dimension of cybersecurity, and cybersecurity is never done by yourself. Then the efforts don't end with your own efforts. So as Felipe just outlined, to secure the world's largest network is quite an effort. And we're doing this on an everyday basis. So basically, over 99.9% of any kind of attacks are prevented by our inbuilt system. We think that cybersecurity is a lot of responsibility by the company. That's why we built in cybersecurity, and that's why we provide, for example, as Felipe said, for example, the updates are automatically. So this is kind of our cybersecurity by default setting. But as we said, it's not only us. We are living, so to secure all the infrastructure is one part, but also you have to work together with all the other stakeholders, with all the other partners to deliver on solutions to secure the whole ecosystem, to secure the internet. So here is a few examples from our German, how, for example, in Germany, we work together with government, stakeholders and NGOs with Deutschland sicher im Netz, or also there is the Phaedo Alliance to work on strong authentication. We didn't mention today, but we are great actually supporter of the two-factor authentication, something very important, I think, for the digital identity in the web. The two initiatives, the Paris Call and a contract for the web, are two international initiatives which we're also supporting. The Paris Call is something that goes beyond technology. It's kind of it's more international law in cyberspace and the question of cyber norms. So here, just a few examples. Also, another example is our safe browsing technology, which is actually a solution technology we developed in Google, and then we actually presented to the communities. Now, for example, Safari and Firefox are using this technology also for their safe browsing. So this is the way cybersecurity, to understand that it's not only it's actually a shared responsibility. So some people say patchwork, so it's kind of all in the mix, basically. We make here a point, say thank you, and we will hand over to Pierre.
Many thanks, Ludmila. Many thanks, Felipe, for this comprehensive presentation. I think you have provided a pretty good overview of how you ensure security of the system overall. Maybe if time allows, I would like to dig a bit deeper on certain aspects that you pointed at the end on what pertains to our panel today on digital identity, your contribution to Phaedo, for instance. But let's maybe give first the floor to the audience, and maybe let's start with Luxembourg, actually. Are there any question to the Google representative on the presentation that was just made?
Thank you for the presentation. No, we have no questions at this moment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Luxembourg. From the audience in the room. Yes, Raphael, please.
I don't know, maybe it's not of interest, of general interest, but I was a bit curious when because I was expecting to know a little bit more about abstraction and automation, and then I understood you, in case of highest priority security bugs, I understood you push the patch, the solution, and you said 1 day, 2 billion devices. Can you develop a little bit more?
Yes, so when we find a critical security bug or vulnerability either in Chrome or on Android, and we're able to find and correct it, we have the possibility of, instead of waiting for the monthly cycle that we use for updating it, to do it in 24 hours. So we push those changes of the code within 24 hours to all the devices that, of course, are reachable, that are connected to the internet, and that are able to receive it at that point in time.
This would mean million of devices, billion of devices? It sounds impressive, huh? Strong claim. Okay, thank you.
Yes, please, if you don't mind, also introduce yourself briefly.
Okay, hello. I'm Victoria Kalogiuri from Digit. First of all, thank you for the presentation and the opportunity to hear you. Just a small question, because I think that the field here is privacy by design. You were referring to mainly a joint device. What are your, let's say, design privacy things that you're doing for other devices as well? Or only it's the focus on Android, because it wasn't so clear to me. Thank you.
So I talked about the Android devices because that's the operating system that we own. I used the phones as an example, but essentially this applies to all devices that use Android as their operating system. So there are some Android TVs out there, right? So in the Internet of Things world, the devices that use Android as an operating system are also covered by the technology or by the security measures that I talked about. There's, for instance, Android Wear. So you have your watches, you have different devices. So for all these devices in which we own the operating system, we keep the same level and the same type of security by design for these devices. So it does not only apply for phones, it applies for all the devices that use that specific operating system as a support.
Okay. So you perform privacy by design only for Android and applications that are your Android software, correct?
Maybe just jump in. I think we should be clear in the definition. Security by design we were talking right now here, and of course also privacy by design is also one of the elements. But we can deliver only on what we own. So it's only the Android and the Google devices and the Android running devices. So it's. I maybe misunderstand your question. I don't know what exactly you would like to hear from us.
No, that was clear. Thank you. This is what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Just a question. Just a question.
If you can please introduce yourself.
Mattia Braida, I'm from DG Connect, from the communication unit. I have just a question related to the release of the security patches that you're doing for Android. How does it work with the contracts that you've got with the customized version of Android, like, I don't know, Samsung version, or how does it work in the case that, like, I mean, I remember the recent, was it last year, the huge security, Wi-Fi security issue that affected most of the Android devices as well?
Yes, so those OEMs, so those manufacturers like Samsung, Huawei, different set of manufacturers out there, what they do is they take the open source version of Android and then they apply their modifications and hacks. So for instance, Samsung provides a different UI, so they fork this type of Android devices. And what they do is that they keep control of how do they manage the security patches. So what we do is that we provide the security patches that we have to these manufacturers as well. And once it's in their hands, it depends on what's their cycle to go and patch them out. It also relates, there's also some operators, some telco operators who keep the control in how they distribute patches as well.
Sorry, and I was just curious to understand in what way you manage like the security, if you want, cycle or control that you've got in similar cases, because obviously something that you control directly will affect directly the Android devices that you can provide the patches immediately. But what happens in the case that I don't know, like, I'm thinking about the use of Google Play in case of Android devices that have not been security patched, and do you understand what
So that makes part of the Defenseindepth design that we've had. So for all of those Android devices, for instance, that use Google Play as their store, they benefit from all the on-cloud technology that we have for Google Play on store. And then for their Android device, there's also specific APIs so that the applications can check the current state of the device and make choices of whether it's safe or not. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious, sorry to jump in again, I was just curious to understand in what way you were managing your strategy in the case that, I don't know, like, a security patch needed to be pushed to all the devices having Android, but you are not in complete control of how the customized Android versions may be affected by the security issues. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. We're going to take a last question. No, so maybe just one request from you, if you could briefly explain a little further, as it is a bit closer to the topic we wanted to address this afternoon on digital identity, the work you're doing in the Phaedo Alliance on authentication. If you can present in a short.
Yes, so there are different dimensions on Phaedo, the current standard, and Phaedo 2, which you might have heard, which is the new standard. You might have heard about what we call the Titan security keys. So these are keys that provide a second level of authentication for the user. So not only when you log in, you put in your password, but you also need to have something that you touch or that you that you present to the computer to make sure that that's you. The idea is that we want the whole ecosystem to be able to use that, and in order to do that, we need to make it a standard that's respected and that's understood and agreed upon by different manufacturers across the industry in order for it to work. If it's just one or two companies that that decide to tie to this standard, then it's harder to make it happen.
Could you present shortly who is part of that ecosystem?
I don't have right now by heart the participants.
Okay. Many thanks for answering the question of the audience. I propose that we move to the next speaker, and we're going to hear from Cecilia about the privacy management at Facebook.
Yes, thank you very much, Pierre. If I can have the clicker, maybe.
Yes.
Thank you.
The presentation is going to come up.
So I will maybe start introducing myself. So my name is Cecilia Zappala. I'm policy manager at Facebook based in Brussels. And I'm not a technician, but I cover a number of European files, including in the area of privacy. So my objective today in this presentation is to give you a very concrete, practical overview on how we approach privacy at Facebook, what are the controls available for Facebook users to manage their privacy. And then I wanted to focus a little bit more on ads, on advertisement, and then again to kind of explain why and what is advertising at Facebook, how does it work concretely, and why we don't think advertising and privacy are in an opposition, but they can coexist together. I don't know if the presentation is great. So our privacy approach. As you all, I'm sure you are all very familiar with GDPR, the new European privacy regulation. It has been it has represented and prompted quite of a change for us in Facebook. We also, together with GDPR, we have decided to publish a set of privacy principles that don't substitute to what GDPR, to what the law is, but they're aimed at illustrating our approach. How do we see privacy at Facebook? And I think it's important that one of the most important things is that we want our users to know that they own their information, they can access them, delete them, control them on Facebook, and that's very important for us. We also want to help people understand how their data is used, and that's why you will see later in the presentation we did a number of changes. And lastly, we want to show that we are accountable for the data of our users. But what does it mean more concretely? Let's talk about the controls available for users. So we have a layered approach to information and transparency. This approach includes specific consent, a new data policy, terms of service, specific documents for more information, user control, and in-product notice. I will focus specifically on some of them in the next slide. So first of all, let's talk about the specific consent. If you are a Facebook user, you might have seen that after GDPR, you were prompted to consent to specific data processing. Also, if you are a new Facebook user, you want to create an account, this is the first screen, you will be prompted to consent to specific data processing. What are they? First of all, facial recognition. So we ask people to choose if they want to enable facial recognition on their profile, for instance, to help tag in pictures, recognize people in pictures, and so on and so forth. We also asked people if they wanted to share on their profile political, religious, and interested in information, meaning are you interested in men, women, both. Those are the so-called sensitive information. For people who had input this information on Facebook before, we asked them once again to consent to the fact that they wanted to keep on sharing this information with Facebook. And third, we asked them if they wanted to use data from partners, meaning if they wanted Facebook to use data collected off Facebook, so on other websites, to get signals in order to be able to serve specific ads. So for these three set of processing, users need to consent, and if they don't consent, there's pretty much no change in the service, in the sense that your ads might be less targeted, less customized on you, but otherwise the service is exactly the same. We also, and I apologize for the slides because they come from a Mac, and I think in the kind of in the conversion, they don't look exactly as they look on my computer. But another thing that we did as a result to GDPR is that we updated our terms of service in a sense that we didn't change the kind of service that we provide to our users, but we try to be more explicit and to kind of draft a simpler contract between us and our user to explain exactly what we do with the data and how the service pretty much works. So you can see an examples. We say that we provide a personalized experience and that ads are basically, advertisement is targeted, is customized on the users. Besides the terms of service, we also have drafted a clearer data policy. What does it mean? It's basically we spell out what data we collect, how we use them. But also we have redesigned a little bit our settings menu, not because settings were not available before GDPR, they were, but they were a bit spread out on Facebook. They were not really easy to find. They were not in a same place. And what we did is that we put all the settings available in the same place so they can be easily accessible. And I will show you exactly how it looks like in a second. So this is what it looks in mobile as well. And then again, we built even additional controls like the privacy shortcuts and privacy checkup, which are things that we propose to people. The privacy checkup, for instance, we ask user to take their privacy checkup to go through their privacy settings on their account and check, verify if they fulfill the privacy requirements that the user want. For instance, how the picture, to whom the picture are accessible, who can see them, and so on and so forth. And then we have additional controls that I will go on a little bit later in the presentation. So, as I said before, we tried and we put all the settings, all the settings available on Facebook together. So very quickly, I wanted to show you how it looks like. You have the account settings, the security ones, the privacy ones that allow you to gain consent or withdraw consent on certain data processing. Ads preferences, we're going to see them in the second part of the presentation, notification, your Facebook information, and so on and so forth. So settings, again, easily accessible, all in the same place. Your Facebook information, there are the two additional elements that I was hinting at before. We have enhanced the ability for users to access their information on website. There is the possibility for any users to see what information they have ever provided on Facebook, and we are talking about absolutely all information. So the post, the photos, the comment, absolutely everything. So users can see that and sort of modify, edit that, or even delete that if they want. So absolutely everything, events, page, marketplace, payment history, everything is accessible on this space. So access your information on the one side, download your information on the other side. What does it mean? This is the ability, again, for Facebook users to download the information they have input on Facebook. They can, if you see the screen, they can download either all the information they have ever input on Facebook or just some of them. So maybe you want to download all your pictures you have put on Facebook, and so you can select the pictures and the photos, and then you can download them. Again, saved items, your places, apps, and so on and so forth. You can establish a data range between which you want your information to be downloaded. And then you have different formats available to download your information, HTML or JSON, in different quality. So that's another effort that we made towards more rights for our users. I wanted now to quickly go through advertising at Facebook and explain again, as I said before, why do we think they are not necessarily in conflict with privacy. But first of all, I wanted to sort of address three common questions that we always hear. First of all, does Facebook sell my data? No, Facebook doesn't sell data. This is not the business model. The business model is not to sell data to anyone. The business model is to provide advertisers with the ability to target people who might be interested in their advertisers. And I can explain a little bit later how concretely this works. Does Facebook listen to my conversation? Once again, this is not true. Facebook doesn't listen to the conversation. In fact, the access to mic is disabled by default. So you have to manually enable it if you want, for instance, if you want to post a video with the audio, then you have to enable access to the mic, and still your conversation are not going to be used in any way. They're not going to be listened to, neither processed. And then third thing, why do I see ads from Facebook on other apps and websites? So this is true. I mean, it's not, it doesn't ask, is it true, but it asks why. So Facebook works with a number of other apps, websites who can decide to be part of what is called the Facebook audience network, meaning when an advertiser wants to target and to serve ads on Facebook, he or she can decide to also serve the ads on other websites or apps that are part of this advertisement network. So that's why sometimes ads are displayed not only on Facebook, but off Facebook as well. How does it work? How do advertisement work? So we need three elements: a user, an advertiser, and a publisher. How a campaign is set up. So first of all, an advertiser chooses a business goal, which can be in an advertiser, we can think about a brand or your own food blog or your own restaurant, any kind of advertiser, any kind of person who needs advertisement. And so the advertiser chooses a business goal, meaning either drive traffic to his website or get more likes on this Facebook page, whatever goal it can be. And based on the goal, the advertisers identifies the audience, the desired audience. And we can see the step-by-step, the kind of formation of an advertisement on Facebook. Once the audience is defined, the advertiser creates an ad, which can be a post with a picture or a video or whatever they want to be the ad like. And then Facebook shows the ad to the people who are potentially interested in the product or in the service that the ad is about. But there is an ability for any Facebook users to control their ad preferences. So and you remember from before in the settings, you have ad settings, ad preference, where you can control to some extent what ads you see. You can't opt out from advertisement as such, but you can modify and decide what you want to see and what you don't want to see. For instance, in the space related to your information, you can see the information based on which you might be targeted from an advertisement. In this case, in the example, the relationship status or the employer, the job title, and you can untoggle. You can decide not to use this information to be targeted by a specific ad. Also, there is another place in the ad preference settings, which is called your interest. So those are the interests that Facebook thinks a certain user could be interested in based on his likes or his interaction with other people or his friends, the interest of the friends, and so on and so forth. And in this space, any user can choose whether those interests are appropriate or he or she wants to be targeted based on those interests or not. So let's assume this person might be interested in SUVs, but if he or she thinks, no, really, I don't want to be targeted by ads which assume that I'm interested in SUV, then you can simply remove those interests. So you can say, I don't want it. And you can even remove everything. So your ads are going to be not particularly targeted on any of your interests. Another advancement we have done pretty recently is increased transparency related to ad. So again, for those who are Facebook users, you can click on the ad you see on your newsfeed, and you can first of all control. You can hide the ad if it's not particularly relevant for you, or you don't want to see it, or you saw it too many times. You can report the ad if you think it's offensive or inappropriate. And you can see why are you seeing this ad? Why are you being targeted by this ad? And so, for instance, in this specific case, the brand wants to target people who are interested in vacations and who are men aged 25 to 44 who live in California. And so From there, you can see if this is appropriate, if you are really interested in vacations, and you can then again manage your ad preference through that. I wanted now very quickly to conclude showing you how doing advertisement on Facebook really looks like. So let's assume there is this page, Fric Frac. It's a restaurant in France. They want to advertise. They want to do an advertisement on Facebook, a post on Facebook. So what they do is that they need to, as we were saying before, to decide what is their business objective. So again, promote the page or boost a post or get more website visit or whatever. They will then set the audience. So one can have define an audience which is already predefined, so the people who already like the page or the friends, people who like the page plus their friends, or the targeting can also set by the advertiser. So in this case, you can set the gender, the age, you can change the age, 60, maximum, maybe less. And then you can include certain interest. So this restaurant, who do they want to target? Do they want to target people who are interested in food? Yes, probably yes. So street food, French cuisine, veganism, and then they are adding croque monsieur as an additional interest that they want to target people based on. And then that's it. Budget is selected over a certain amount of time. It can be 1 day, 7 days, 14 days. And then the advertisement is almost ready to go. It needs to be reviewed to make sure that this matches, that it meets our advertising policies. And then it will probably be shown to the people that are part of the target. So to conclude very quickly, there is also an additional element, which is the measurement element. So this is sort of a very complex summary of the campaign that shows what is the result of the campaign. So how many people actually went on the website or clicked or liked the page or whatever. So this is important for us to show to the advertisers what the impact of the campaign was and how to retarget or modify the objective or the campaign itself. So I'm done with the presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Cecilia, for the very comprehensive presentation of your privacy policies and the data control that you have put in place for the user. Colleagues in Luxembourg, do you have any question to Facebook?
Yes, hello, here Alberto Gago. I'm policy officer in the Data Policy and Innovation Unit in Luxembourg. And I have a question because from the presentation of Cecilia, thank you very much for that. I saw 3 questions that were very interesting. Does Facebook sell data? Does Facebook listen to our conversation? And I would like maybe to transpose those 2 questions to Google and see whether they also have some answers on that, and to hear their answers, since we are in a privacy-oriented kind of conversation. And also, I see that you have done a lot of work, both Google and Facebook, on the possibility for users to manage their data. But I would like to know, on this right to be forgotten, how do you implement it, and how can the user make sure that the data has been deleted for good from your servers? Thank you.
I don't know if I may add other questions, or you prefer to go through and then come back to Luxembourg?
Yes, let's maybe, because Alberto's question was quite comprehensive, so let's maybe get through this one, and I'll come back to Luxembourg for a second round of questions. Yes. Shall we start with Google's prospect, maybe on these 3 key aspects?
Yes. So does Google sell your data? Same answer as Facebook. No, we're not in the business of selling data. It's the same business of advertising that Cecilia mentioned. Does Google listen to you? No. So there are a couple of products that use voice features. So think, for instance, Google Home. So you need to activate the device or your phone or whatever that is with OK Google. And then there's a couple of things that technically happen. For instance, so first, the first level of detection is done on the device itself, so nothing is sent yet to the server. And then if the device, if the algorithm kind of says, yes, you asked for a request for a restaurant and you want to know what time it's open, then that information gets sent to the server, your query gets sent back, and then it gets back to your device. These devices are not on a eternally listening to what you say mode and sending that back to Google all the time. Those are the two questions. And the third one was right to be forgotten. When there's a request for right to be forgotten, what we do is we remove from the Google search index that entry, right? That entry still lives in some other place, in a newspaper or in some other part of the world. So we cannot guarantee that that newspaper article is completely removed and that it disappears from the internet. What we guarantee is that within Google, we do not reference to that article anymore when you do a search query and you get the search results back.
Thanks for that response, Cecilia, on the right to be forgotten as well. And maybe to complement Alberto's question, because it was quite interesting the way you presented the possibility for users to export their data using this feature that you presented. So how portable is that to another platform, for instance? So you presented different sort of format, but these are technical formats. There's also the structure of the data, which is equally important beyond the format. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start with the right to be forgotten. Thank you, Alberto, for the question. If a Facebook user wants to delete its Facebook profile, he or she can do it at any time. So there is an easy button where you can say erase my profile. The service will ask you, are you sure that you want to do that? Because we had many issues of people who had deleted all their data. And since you can't go back, then you need to make sure that the person wants really to do that. And then the data are deleted. So the profile is deleted, data are deleted with the right to be forgotten and with deletion of the profile, then this is really implemented. There is the possibility also to kind of snooze its own Facebook account, not to delete the data, but it's not the right to be forgotten. In terms of the ability to export data to other service, yeah, this is exactly one of the questions that we are very much reflecting upon. Our CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, published an op-ed a couple of weeks ago saying that legislation on data portability is actually required because, of course, we can enable as much as we can the fact of people to take their data with them, but of course, it's a bit difficult when there are no or limited number of services that users can put their data on. I must also say that we have a project together with my colleagues at Google and Microsoft and Twitter. We launched the 4 companies. It's called the Data Transfer Project. Is a project that it's aimed at facilitating from the perspective of the user, the transfer of specific data from one service to another. It's open source, it's free for everyone to join. So this is one of the sort of experiment that we are now having in terms of data portability, but a lot still needs to happen, both from the companies and from most likely the policymakers' perspective, in order to make sure that this is really something that is available for everyone to do.
Yeah, and on the data portability side, that's actually super interesting because you actually mentioned the part of making this meaningful for users, right? So it's not good enough to tell users you can have a dump of all the data that you have and you basically get just ones and zeros and you don't know how to use it. But the data transfer project is super interesting because it lets a user say, I want to move my data away from this service and into this one. And the industry should be able to provide that and say, yes, move all your, I don't know, let's say all your files that you have from Google Drive to Dropbox without them having to download everything, then going and uploading everything. So we're also working with that set of standards and bodies in order to make that as useful as possible for users.
Okay, many thanks. It's very relevant, actually, the two things that you have mentioned in the context of free flow of data, as obviously you, among other business organizations, including European operators, are involved in the development of codes of conduct at European level on data porting and switching of cloud and other data service provider. We've indeed taken due note of the data transfer project, which is a very interesting approach. Of course, we would like to see the group of companies participating in this endeavor expanding beyond the prime group of companies that initiated the project. But indeed, going forward beyond the SOL, as you mentioned, the SOL 1 and zeros, going towards more semantic of the data seems very important in that prospect. Also, very interesting point on your CEO's comment on taking a more coercive approach, actually, from the public policy side, so a more regulatory approach to data porting and switching. But again, on a Commission point of view, so far we have taken a self-regulatory approach, but we'll monitor very closely how this will develop on European markets. There was another question from our Luxembourg colleague.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. Two actually, quite short. The first one is regarding these various possibilities for Facebook users to change the setting of their privacy or their choices on how or what to get on advertisement. Do you have, or maybe can you share with us some statistics on how many users actually go and change the default settings? And the second question that I have is something that you have not really touched, but a lot of websites, when you want to log in or you want to subscribe to a newsletter, allow you to identify yourself through Facebook rather than introducing again your email address and other things. How this works in terms of relationship between you, Facebook, and the other third-party website? Who is responsible for what, especially under the GDPR perspective? Thank you.
Yes, so the question on statistics is very interesting. I unfortunately don't have any number. I can get back to. I will have to check and get back to you on that, because I don't know in terms of who changed their settings and so on and so forth. On the Facebook login, yes. So in my presentation. In the settings, there is a part of the settings where you are able to see what are the apps and the website that share information such as the login with you. And this is a change that we also did as a result of Cambridge Analytica. I mean, it was a control that was already available, but we made it much more prominent. So you can see what websites that you have decided to log in on using Facebook. Of course, the responsibility there in terms of data processing and respecting the rules of GDPR is on that website to make sure that there is the necessary consent or legal basis to process the data of the person who has decided to use the Facebook login.
Many thanks. Other question from the audience here in Brussels. Yes, please.
Yes, good afternoon, and thanks for the presentations. Thomas Daan from E3 Connect, Next Generation Internet. I was wondering whether, a little bit in line with the same question from Luxembourg, whether Google has also a kind of traceability or, let's say, transparency to the user, to the one who holds a Google account and uses all the Google applications, whether they can do the same thing. Because I think to me, it sets a kind of standards, as Facebook explained. It's very transparent, accessible, also for less literate people. So I wonder if Google does or maybe will do, which is wishful thinking, this kind of exercise. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't want any to make your advertisement, but I'll do it. So Google account or my account, it's called a service we actually started a few years ago already. And it has been already, like in the last, again, after the GDPR improved, but it was the kind of transparency you have, what is doing with your account, what kind of ads you have, how far you want to personalize it. It's called My Account or Google Account, different names in the last few years. And it is exactly what you can go. There is also, it's quite impressive, like 20 million people using it monthly, for example, visiting it. And there is also the security checkup, once again, something that you can use and go through, like I think 700,000 people have used it in the past 1 year. So I think this is kind of something that there are tools in place, just use them. So, but I'm happy to share this kind of stuff as well, so you can have a look at it. Felipe?
Yeah, I will just add that we have similar tools to put transparency and control into our users' hands. We also have a privacy checkup. It not only covers all the advertisement part of it, so it not only lets you tweak and control and change and delete that information, but it covers even a broader scope. We have those, for instance, for privacy-sensitive settings like your search history, which allows you to go in and look for a bundle. Say you were looking for a ring for your next proposal, and you don't want the person who you share your computer with to find out that, so you can very easily go inside, search for a ring proposal, and delete all the history that's tied to that, so that private information does not leak if you have a shared device. So we also have those controls. Account.google.com is the place where a user can go to find them.
We're going to take...
Okay.
Let's maybe take the last question so that we have time for our last speaker.
Hi, my name is Anselm Rodenhausen, also from DG Connect, from the unit responsible for the digital single market strategy. Many thanks, Cecilia, for the very interesting presentation on your privacy policy and also explaining in a good way how your advertising cooperation with third-party websites providers is happening. As regards privacy, we all know in February this year there was a decision by the German competition law authority in which they concluded the investigation that Facebook had abused their dominant position by requiring customers to consent to collecting also data from third-party websites in order to use the Facebook services in the first place. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit how Facebook's privacy policy has changed following this decision, and if any of the principles that you presented in your presentation and any of these features are a direct consequence of this decision.
Yes, thank you for this question. It's actually very interesting. No, we haven't changed our practices based on this decision. As far as I know, the decision is in the phase of being appealed right now, or it has not been yet enforced. It is an interesting decision in the sense that it is a privacy-based decision coming from a competition authority. So we have observed that very, very closely. In terms of fulfillment of the GDPR obligation, our main interlocutor is the IDPC, so the Irish Data Protection Authority. They are the ones in charge of enforcing GDPR. There are already a number of cases ongoing, but we discuss with them in terms of privacy and when and if there will be things that we will need to change, we will do so based on our discussion with the IDPC. In terms of FCO, since the case hasn't really landed yet, I'm not really sure what we are going to do in terms of measures that we will potentially put in place, and I'm not sure whether this is going to be in Germany, because the decision is a German decision, it's not a European decision, so I'm not sure whether this will be just in Germany or anywhere in Europe, so for the time being, unfortunately, I can't say more than that.
We'll take the last question here.
Yes. Thanks for the interesting presentation. This morning we had Flora Frederick's Cybersecurity unit. This morning we had sessions on privacy by design. Now, I bought a new PC and I thought I will never log into my Google account just to find out what happens. And you cannot do anything. You cannot do search, you cannot do Google, YouTube, you cannot do anything, any of the nice Google applications. I will not go into Facebook. I don't think it's needed. But is this privacy by design? I think you sign away your privacy the moment that you buy one of these products, no?
Very personal comment. I was not using a lot of Google. I was not logged in Google accounts before that. So I was able to use search. You have like the logins and logouts. So it's actually normally that you can search without being logged in. This is actually a free tool. Maybe we can look at technically afterwards. Felipe, do you want to?
Yeah, I want to echo that, right? We have a set of products that you can use as a signed out user. Google Search is definitely one of them. YouTube is also one of them. Maps is one of them. And then you have those which we need to know who you are, so you need to be signed in order to be able to give you a meaningful service like Gmail, right? There's no way of using Gmail without being signed in. But these other services, Google Search, Google Maps, YouTube, are available with a signed out account, like with no account needed, essentially.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I realize that there are still a few questions in the room. I propose that you park those questions for the final Q&A so that we give time for our last speaker who will provide a more independent perspective on the topic coming from the Finnish Research Institute. Sira, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre. And thank you for the opportunity to come to give the presentation from the topic that we have been having research in the last few years. Maybe also my presentation comes. Okay, so the title of the presentation is quite general, analyzing risk in the digitalized border management systems. But as the topic of this session was more in the cybersecurity and people's identity, I tried also to look at the perspectives here to look at how the identity should be considered in the digitalized border management. So the digitalization of the border is quite a big topic, or has been a topic in the recent years, also in the EU research funding. There has been a lot of projects that I base my presentation also to develop the devices, but also to assess the acceptability, and the latest also now to look at the possible new threats and risks that we face with a digital environment. These I only address quite in a general level. As said, the project is starting next autumn. But the rapid change, of course, it provides us new opportunities to increase the security and the EU also has provided new legislation, new pushes towards that this usage of more data and more biographical information from persons crossing the border. So it is, of course, the aim should be still that we increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the border and the border guards' decision making and border checking tasks. This is shortly the process that I think most of us are very familiar with when we cross the border. Of course, the free movement in Europe now has made that we don't have to do these border checks when we cross the borders inside Europe, but when we go outside the Schengen area, we have to cross the border, and there the legislation is, or the processes are, regulations are a little bit different for EU nationals and then also the nationals coming outside the border. But what is needed is that the travel document is first checked, so you need to have a valid travel document, passport, also visa if you are the visa required person. The eligibility of this travel document is checked, and then your identity is checked afterwards. So the border is looking if you are the one presenting the travel document. For the third country nationals, they also have to provide the purpose of stay, that they have the means to come into Europe and they have the purpose. And based on this information, the first line border guards are making the decision, or the technology is making the decision if you are able to cross the border and come inside the EU. Okay. Airport is the one that is the predominant adapter of the digitalized processes. For air borders, the airport environment in itself has found that it's for their purposes very beneficial to digitalize processes, to find processes where you can do self-service or automated processes. You can do it in advance or at the airport, and this is the border is there in between the digitalized and very advanced technological environment, and there the border has to adapt also. They have to fit into this advanced environment. It's a data-centric transport node also. They have the data from you where you come and where you are heading, and the ecosystem shares data with themselves. Also there the legislation has now changed that also the borders have better knowledge of who is coming, what are their purpose, and how they should handle the travelers that come. The drivers there, maybe one key driver we could see also from this technological development is the physical infrastructure constraints. If we can smoothen the processes, make a seamless flow of the travelers, maybe we can spare quite a big investments also in the infrastructure, and that of course is a big push factor for that. But of course, as here are the factors, some of the factors that need to be taken care. So facilitation, as said, that is a big thing, to put more people through the airport or through the border. If we wouldn't have to care about the security, the facilitation part would be quite easy, but we have to all the time, the security when we come to the border, the security is the first, and then comes the facilitation. Also, of course, interoperability factors with different partners and different technologies is important. Then I've put the fairness as a factor there of all the acceptability of things, that when we put technological means at border, we also have to consider that it's taken into account different travelers and people from different backgrounds. This is the process. I already had one picture of the process, and this is the process. It's from Frontex, from the automated border checks. So when we move towards the automated border checks, currently the traveler presents the document, the passport, in the machine, and then the machine is doing reading the MRZ, the code from there. It's getting the biographical information from the chip and looking that the chip is authentic. It's doing this automatically and providing then information for the border guard. The traveler then has to give his or her face, and the facial verification is done. What is at the end is for the third country nationals are the questions if they are allowed to, if they have the purpose for staying. And this is currently something that it's also under development, that if we would have means to look at the people's purpose of coming through technological means. And I think this is when the entry-exit system now comes into force into maybe next year, then for the trusted travelers that have been pre-assessed, this could be also that they are allowed to answer the questions through written means, or of course it could be an interview, but you don't have to have a border guard who is assessing you and making the decision or to accept or reject. We have to say that finally the border guards, so the systems are not there by themselves, but there is always a border guard afterwards looking what is happening, and they can stop this system. But of course it changes a lot the future systems if also the third country nationals are able to pass the e-gates. Maybe one comment back to the entry-exit system, that of course now there is the facial recognition of them, but when we have the entry-exit systems, third country nationals, we also save their fingerprints in the database. So they are not checked at every border crossing, but they are saved there if the person, if we want to check, or if the border authority wants to check the person more carefully. But of course, as I already said, that maybe new threats, new vulnerabilities may arise when we provide these new digital means to do border checking. Here are mentioned some maybe quite obvious ones, but some of the threats, of course, the technology is developing very fast, and there are issues that we should be very careful in following what is happening in the technology. When we start more and more to trust the digital identity of a person, of course, there's also the breeder documents, the chain how the digital identity is given to a person. That is, of course, of most importance. So it might bring new vulnerabilities to one that we currently have in the passport process. But there is already now, we know that the change to have to provide a birth certificate or marriage certificate, it's not maybe totally unbreakable. So and then there is this quite new threat, which is this morphed faces threat that is not very well addressed by the current technology. It's hard for the current facial recognition systems to recognize this. So people can put or provide their own photographs that they made themselves, and it's the process of how the issuance of passport is made that how good the system is to find these threats. They can be quite sophisticated, and though they are free programs and coming more and more sophisticated all the time, and if you are morphing your sister with your sister's phone or relatives, it's maybe quite easy to pass the control systems. And then, of course, document forgeries. Maybe the chip technology now has lowered the risk of the forged documents. So now the forged documents risk is mainly inside EU that this is used, not maybe so much in the Schengen outer borders. But still, this has to be kept in mind that, for example, with this, if the process for the digital identity uses the forged documents. But all the time when then there is this identification based on the face or the fingerprint, we have to be quite careful that about the imposters or then using the watch list to identify criminals and terrorists. Here could be that maybe the border is also not that sensitive for this risk as the face is for passport. It's still regulated and they are quite high quality, but if we would use these from the surveillance cameras and then try to compare them with the watch list, we could get maybe not so the risk of getting bad results arises. Here are some like scientific way of looking how impersonation risk, what kind of risks there are. So there is, of course, if they're from the basic risk, there is of course the risk that the border guard, when doing manual control, thinks that a person is coming as a trusted person and presents himself or herself, but the border guard is thinking that he is somebody else. But of course, then also it can be that when a person puts makeup or has some different haircut or so, from the border perspective, you can say that it's already like an attack to the biometric technology. Or then if you, for the risk assessment, if you are able to provide different means of how you present yourself and make an attack to that. And then the four below are then that if you are doing that for the system, so if it's not for the border guard, but you do this attacks to the system. We had a project that ended 2 years ago, and there it built some ABC systems, and there we looked at different possible risks or threats to the border control system, and we identified more than 100 different threats. Of course, the project maybe could handle them, but this must be kept in mind that there is always risks that can affect the damage potential, so how many persons can pass, or then the exploitability of that, how easy it is to introduce this kind of risks. The most what was affected was, of course, software components, as this digitalized system is mostly software. And as said, that the tampering or denial of service were found the most threat categories. As a conclusion, it is said that for border control technologies, that we have to keep in mind that they are like integrated in the social environment, that they are not standalone biometric devices. During the last years, I think, and during the big migration flow, migration flow push, it has been also said that with the technology we shouldn't handle those problems that are not handled by technology, so that this border issues should be handled somewhere else, and then the technology is used for checking people, and that is good to keep in mind also all the time. And of course, this trade-off between security and performance, this is always there, and I think when coming to more data, more background information from people, more sharing information with different stakeholders, this is also must kept in mind. Then it's, as I said, also the evaluation and prediction of new risks, legal, ethical, and social impact analysis of acceptability must always be there. And of course, here are some that maybe it's also a benefit that it's like EU-wide implementation, not that some small area could do different, so that the regulation is EU-wide and looks is assessed correctly, how would I say. Also maybe that you find the vulnerabilities then easier and change information between border guards. But of course the reinforced impersonation strategies, as I said, we must be awake in that, especially with the I would say the morphing of face images, so that the passport can be quite valid but still the person is not the one that is shown in the picture. And maybe some kind of hybrid solutions where this physical security and digital security is combined is a good solution for handling these new risks. Maybe this is it. I think that it's yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, many thanks, Sierra, for this very comprehensive presentation. Also, it's very concrete. The example that you have provided, it shows as well the convergence of physical security things that are really falling into the regalian domain of border control with the digital identity and the challenges that are at stake behind this digital transformation of processes that are typically in the remit of states. So that's very, very interesting from this perspective. Are there questions from the colleagues in Luxembourg about this presentation?
Thank you. No question from this side.
Questions, thank you. From the audience here in Brussels. No, it's good. That gives me the opportunity to ask you some question. Then, I found this really interesting how you presented the process of how a digital identity is given to a person and the challenges that this pose in terms of risk of counterfeiting, the technique, some of the technique you presented, which relate to spoofing of identity. How can this process be improved? Are there techniques to correlate with other kind of data sources? Will it happen by someday that there will be a correlation of your digital identity together with your Facebook or Google account or other kind of digital service account? Doesn't that create other kind of risk because you can also create fake Google and Facebook accounts?
So thank you for the question. There has been already now trials where people can use then their face and could go through border checks. Not in EU, but otherwise in the world, and that is based on that you provide your passport and then your facial image, and then afterwards the facial image is used to cross the border. But of course, there were how you then, as currently the passport is needed to do it, and how would that be changed to, and what would be the process to really to verify that you are you and you have the travel document, of course, also authorized from your authorities. If it's an exchange that your authority is making you the digital identity, and then, but I don't see that this opportunity that you could provide your digital identity with your social identity. Somehow I see that it must always be somebody from the authority side. But as said, there is a big from the airport side, because the airport would like to have a really smooth process, quick, smooth process, and the border checking is there between their processes. So they would like that you could pass the whole process through your face. Of course, if we include then, for example, additional biometrics, but that may also be difficult. So no easy solution, I find.
Something that strikes me across your three presentations is that there's one important thing that has not been mentioned by any of you, which is the electronic identity regulation in Europe, the eIDAS regulation, which from our perspective forms the backbone of what digital identity should develop in Europe, and how future trust services in the digital age should develop in the coming years. I would be interested to get your respective views on this. Any of you wants to start?
Yes, maybe I can go for that. This is not for the moment something that we provide, but following up some conversation we had with some of your colleagues, we are actually exploring this to try and understand what's the perspective of the European Commission when they hint at the fact that the system could be sort of complemented by using or having private companies to sort of be part of the structure, and we are very interested in that. It could be something that might work. Of course, there are many kind of implications. Some also very important from a law enforcement surveillance perspective, of course, but this is something that we are happy to explore together with you, and I think discussions are already ongoing.
I think we didn't mention any kind of regulation in our presentation, exactly not to bother with, I mean, we can talk about GDPR and AS directive, eIDAS and all this stuff. I think on the digital identity, this is a topic which, like Facebook, we will also we are approaching. There are discussions with the Commission on different elements of the EIDA regulation and its implementation, where the browsers, for example, are on board as well. So I think this is something that we will definitely go forward. The EIDAS regulation, I'll take my other hats from my previous life. Public servant was basically something in order to enforce the e-government and for national administrations. So here, of course, if there's any chance and opportunity to deep in further, we will be definitely on board. And there are projects in place. There are different, for example, conferences, like in November in Berlin, there will be one gathering exactly on the topic on digital identification. I guess they will be able to do and to explain a bit more and elaborate on that.
Yes, maybe I must say that it hasn't been risen so much in our discussions, I think, at the border area. So I don't have so much to say that by using now the e-driver's license, which is in Finland, you can use that as an identity. So it's a digital identity. It's I think very convenient, but not very well known when you present it. So that is, of course, also that it must be widely accepted also throughout the society.
There were a couple of questions that I asked the colleague to park. Maybe our colleague from the Next Generation Internet. No, you're okay. Maybe there was a question from you that I had parked.
Thank you very much for the presentations. They were indeed very interesting. Now, I'm just not going to, my name is Başak and I work for Innovation and Network Agency of the European Commission and dealing with digital projects. Now, I'm not going to speak as a person who deals with digitals, but I'm going to speak like an ordinary citizen, from the side of the ordinary citizens. I think that citizens now care a lot about privacy and data protection, especially after suspected devastating impacts on the election and democratization process. I think people really do care and want to be protected in that sense. But I'm not sure if they know how. And I know for people here and for you, it's very simple clicks, very simple process. But for people outside, it is not so simple. When you try to secure your data or when you want to give consent on Google, there are many moments that you come to a one-way road. For ordinary people. So, and given that these people may be the people that are targeted for manipulation, you may end up having a huge impact on our political future. So I'm wondering basically whether you feel accountable for that and whether you actually have workshops, open workshops for ordinary, very ordinary people. Do you go to schools? Do you have campaigns as such? And also, for instance, do you work with political analysts and researchers to know how to secure that better? And moreover, I would like to know what are your impressions about the EU and about national governments when you talk about regulation? How much do you think that they can take steps ahead of you so that you don't get into troubles, unwanted troubles? How well they can regulate you, and what will be your proposals and suggestions in that? Thank you very much.
Many thanks. That's a very comprehensive question. You're touching upon many aspects, but it's very good that we finish on some of these aspects. Who wants to get started? That's maybe you can not necessarily cover all the aspects that you've raised, but maybe some specific.
I can start because
Ludmila.
Thank you very much. It was really a great question, and I think this is exactly the questions I like to hear, critical questions. So I will start from the and Felipe, please correct me, on the consent, I think on the question on the consent, so there are, what Google always tries to, and the engineers, they have the usability in mind. They have the user friendliness, and they try in a certain way they understand, and with different research groups and experience groups, we're trying to understand what is the most practical approach of consent, how we can technically implement it so it will be easy, cheesy, let me say like this. So as I mentioned before, the Google account, my account was launched in 2015 and was developed in the last few years, where you can have a lot of all this consent issues and all of these settings. I have even to correct myself, it's 20 million per day, not per month, visiting this account. But it's always, so this is on the consent, and there are now ongoing, I would say, legal cases. What is the understanding of consent and what is the right approach of consent? But it's a very legal question on the one side and a very technical on the other side, so that both have to merge. On the question of trainings for people outside, so what we definitely do, we have a huge program, it's called Grow with Google, where we offer many trainings in Europe. We hit the 10 million benchmark last month, where we have from digital skills to AI to many different, so there are different courses in different countries and online, so it's kind of a, so this is like what we try to present and to offer, because I think you're right, training is one of the, and education and is one of the key elements in order to keep up with the digital development. What we also do is when you go on the different Google sites, it's that we offer a lot of trainings and tools for self-education. But this is only a part what we can develop. We also have a lot of projects in different countries, in Germany, in Finland, with cities, with trade associations, with trade unions, in order to develop and to encourage digital skills from the basics to even advanced on universities on AI, for example. Consent, digital skills, trainings, EU elections. Yes, on the elections this year, we had a huge effort concerning how to. So what we did is a lot of different elements on search, how we present the political groups, how we present the politician on search, for example. We gave a lot of possibility and visibility for this. We tried also with the ranking to adapt it. What we also did is a huge effort to talk to different groups like politicians and journalists, and we also offer for them as a specific targeted group, a bit more vulnerable, different trainings, but also, for example, Project Shield is one project that DDoS attacks protection for journalists, for news, and for politicians. So this is a lot of a variety of election effort, what we did, because I don't think it's kind of a, I think accountability is I'm a lawyer and it's a very legal term, so, but I think there is a responsibility, as I talked at the beginning of our presentation, which we try to address. And that's why I think also on the election, for example, let me touch upon on hate speech and misinformation. There is, for example, very successful self-regulation efforts among the Facebook, Twitters, and Googles in this world, where with code of conduct, we try to self-regulate ourselves, and it was actually quite successful. I think Commissioner Gabriel was, before the elections, was also saying and complimenting the Facebooks, Twitters, Googles in this world, that actually this kind of code of conduct help to set that we were monthly reporting what we do, the different hate speech, code of conduct, misinformation. So I tried to cover a lot of area. I hope that's fine, and happy also to provide you with further information on this if necessary. Felipe, do you have, please?
I can add a little bit more color on how we do product development side. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge that yes, there's still a lot of work to do in order to make our controls and our transparency more comprehensible for users. one of the ways that we're doing that, so we tackle different areas. The first one is, you asked, yes, for you it's very evident that you can go to my account or to my Google and do things there. So the first one is making people aware that these things are open and available to them. So we're running campaigns for our users where they get notified and invited so that they can go and discover those places. So that's one of the ways that we're doing. Now, when we design and develop our products, we do a lot of user research. So what we do, and we do a lot of user research worldwide. So this covers Asia, Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa. It covers the whole world. So what we do is we go out with an external research agency. We invite random people, so to speak, from those countries, from those places, to come and interact with our products. And our group of product managers, engineers, and UI designers sit in a room and see how these people interact with those products. And they take those lessons that they learn and cycle back into the product to make it more comprehensible. Now, Ludmila mentioned that it's this point where comprehension and the legally sensitive text comes into place. So, for instance, in our last iteration of updating our legally sensitive texts, we sat down for a week in Paris. We invited people who spoke different languages because we also provided in different languages. And we iterated on our workshop with people that came from the outside and with our lawyers, and we optimized for comprehensibility of the user, right? So that was our main objective, to make sure that people understood the most out of the text that they read. And we keep on doing this. This is not something that we're doing.
Thanks a lot for the very comprehensive. Thanks for the comprehensive answer. I propose we make the last remarks from this side, because I see people are moving to other engagements. So if you can answer shortly the question and also conclude on the...
Yeah, maybe just very quickly, I wanted to pick up on 2 points. First of all, how we communicate with citizens on their rights, on what they can do, how they can control. This is a little bit what I tried to explain in my presentation. Of course, it's hard. It's hard because we are required to provide a certain amount of information from a legislative perspective. But of course, this information needs to be simple, easy, and short, because otherwise people don't care, they don't understand. So it's very hard to kind of strike the right balance between these two. We have done a quite massive communication campaign around GDPR. You might have seen announcement in the metro, in Brussels, on Facebook as well, to make people aware that GDPR was coming and what their rights were. Very quickly, on the relationship with researchers, we do work massively with researchers, especially in the context of election and misinformation. This is something that we're still doing. There are ongoing discussions with the Commission, with the misinformation unit. So this is something that makes totally sense, and we are definitely trying to do our best on that side.
Yeah, maybe I shortly comment the good results or the good answers already from the colleagues. As I'm a researcher side and we look at the usage of this new technology, it has been still quite amazing how much difficulties the users have it. So you put your passport, you show your face, but I think it has been good to listen how much effort the companies are doing, and I think it must be a continuous effort also for the normal user, but also then the professional user side when this must be. So this is something, not a case where you can rest that now it's fine, it's okay, it's handled.
Okay, many thanks. I think this last part of the debate and what you have opened could be subject to a discussion on its own, and probably worth Future Connect University session. Many thanks to the 4 panelists for being with us this afternoon, for being very open to answer all the questions from our colleagues and the broader audience. Thanks to our colleagues who attended from Luxembourg. Many thanks to Andrea Dumitrescu who has been organizing this Connect University session. You can also thanks for the audience which is attending remotely outside of the Commission premises. Also, we have seen that there were various comments on the social media, so this was duly taken into account. Slides presentation will be published on the Connected University space, so you can find back all the information published there. If you have some of the complementary information that you pointed to, we will be happy to post the complement there on this web space as well. The future Connect University session are also available on the Connect University website, and we're looking forward to have you listening to some of the future sessions that will be addressing further cybersecurity and privacy issues in the digital space. Many thanks to all of you, and let me conclude with a round of applause for our panelists today. Many thanks and good afternoon to all. Bye.
Can we ask the Facebook colleagues to send us the figures, if possible? We can upload them on the Connect University, the figures that you mentioned that you don't have here today. So it would be very useful for us to have this input. Thank you.